Last week in Michigan politics, an unprecedented choice rocking the political world and the race for the White House. We have reaction and thoughts on what's next from top players. Plus, former President Donald Trump made his way to Grand Rapids over the weekend, what he had to say amidst his first rally with his new running mate. And a new law has some concern about when an election recount can happen in our state. Can you still ask for one if you believe there's been fraud? We verify. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side Rundown.
Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history.
Vice President Kamala Harris kicked off her presidential campaign while saluting President Joe Biden just one day after he announced he was dropping out of the race on Sunday. Following the president's announcement, much of Michigan's top Democratic leaders are also putting their support behind Vice President Harris for the nomination. We spoke with leaders within the party and the head of the state's Republican Party about what's next. The race for arguably the most powerful post in the world flipped on its head with just one post to social media. Following President Joe Biden's exit from the presidential race, Vice President Kamala Harris quickly racking up endorsements from a number of top Michigan Democrats.
I am supporting and endorsing her because President Biden supported her yesterday, and he, quite frankly, was the person that got 14 million votes in a Democratic nominating elections throughout the 50 states, and she was part of that ticket. And I've heard many things during the last 3 weeks, but one of the things I strongly heard was that people did not want to feel disenfranchised.
But without Biden at the top of the ticket, his delegates to the party's convention in Chicago next month are up for grabs. Some Republicans already honing in on Harris as a likely choice, though the state party's chair believes their message won't change.
They are part and parcel the same package. If anything, in some of the issues, especially regarding the automobile industry, she's further left than where Joe Biden was.
While many Democrats have been swift to rally behind the vice president,
I think she will be a strong candidate. I think she'll be a great president of the United States.
Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, a close ally of Biden during his race, acknowledged her personal choice is not necessarily set just yet.
She's got to go out and work. This is a process that must be open and transparent and understood, and she has to go campaign to the delegates to win the nomination.
But as support within the party continues to grow, many are looking to whom Harris will choose to be her potential running mate. One thing that does seem settled, it likely won't be Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
No, I'm not planning to go anywhere.
So if they offer it, you will not take it?
I am not leaving Michigan. I'm proud to be the governor of Michigan. I've been consistent. I know everyone is always suspicious and asking this question over and over again. I know you're doing your job. I'm not going anywhere.
So what should Harris be looking for to win Michigan?
Quite frankly, I want to see someone who cares about the heartland, who understands a battleground state, who's going to work hard to bring people together, who's going to care about our economy, fighting for working men and women. So I think there are probably a number of candidates that she is going to be looking for, and I'm going to respect that process, but I do want to see someone who cares about the heartland of America.
While she pushed back on any potential VP offer, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is among those endorsing Vice President Harris to be the Democratic nominee to replace President Biden. Whitmer also announced she will co-chair the Harris campaign. She also served as the co-chair of President Biden's re-election campaign as well. Previously, the governor herself had been talked about as a potential candidate to replace President Biden. People here in our community were also reacting to President Biden's decision. 13 on Your Side's Kiara Patterson spent a day talking to people around Grand Rapids and a local voter education event.
Just a few hours after President Biden announced he'll be dropping out of the 2024 presidential race on Sunday, Michiganders are speaking out about his decision.
It's a bummer. I was really hoping he we just continue to stay in the race, but I understand.
It's bittersweet in that I think Joe Biden is an incredible American and a real leader for this country, but I think it's ultimately the right thing for him, for the campaign.
President Biden's announcement brings an abrupt end to his half-century-long political career and race for the White House just 4 months before Election Day. Two Democrats tell me today's announcement is bittersweet, but they say they're hopeful and optimistic for the future.
I'm optimistic, and I hope Joe Biden dropping out doesn't take away from the last 3.5 years of the work that he did, especially after Donald Trump was president from 2016 to 2020, where this country went downhill.
I'm excited for what Kamala Harris can do. I think she is a fighter, and when she is sitting up there against President Trump, they're going to see him for the old fool that he is.
After Sunday's announcement, Black organizers came together at Four Star Theater to educate the community on social issues and voter registration.
And we don't step up. We don't go out there and vote.
CEO of Jump Ahead L3C, Dee Jones, says it's important to be knowledgeable about presidential candidates and their policies.
The August 6th election is coming up, and then November 6th is the actual general election. So people need to vote in the primaries, which usually Black communities don't vote in those primaries. They always say, we'll see you in the general election, but we need to start voting for the people and just educating people that a primary election even exists.
Other organizers of Sunday's event say no matter what side of the aisle you're on this upcoming election, it's important that you vote.
I'm just hoping that we just make an educated voice. I'm hoping that we can get out as a community and exercise our right to vote. We have ancestors that died for civil rights, slavery, things like that. They push the policies, right? So we need to make sure we're voting.
And 13 on your side's Lauren Baker also sat down with political science professor Doug Copeman hours after Biden's announcement to get his reaction to the historic announcement.
Doug Copeman, a political science professor from Calvin University, joins us now with his thoughts on the decision. Doug, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here. What an exciting thing.
Yes, for sure. And now, Doug, actually in an interview earlier this week, you predicted this would happen in the next 2 weeks. Are you surprised this came so soon?
I am a little surprised it came this early. I mean, commentators would say it would happen slowly and then all at once. President Biden really had until probably August 5 to make a final decision, but I think he felt the pressure internally from people who've been his longtime colleagues in the House and in the Senate, and then decided probably sooner is better than later to give at least some time for the Democratic delegates to the convention to deliberate about their choices, their new choices now for president and vice president.
And as we know, West Michigan is an important region in the presidential election. If Kamala Harris becomes the nominee, how do you think voters will respond to her?
Well, for the Democratic Party, for Democratic voters, it looked like the least interested in the election people were young voters, women voters, and African-American voters. And Kamala Harris is more exciting to all those three groups of voters. So I think the Democratic Party will be far more energized now if she is the nominee. It looks like she has a pretty safe way to the nomination. It's not a locked-in deal yet, but I think when the dust is settled in 3 weeks or so, that if she is the nominee, that'll bring more energy to the Democratic side of the ticket. And really, turnout is vital in this kind of an election.
All right, Doug Copeman, a political science professor from Calvin University. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And Biden's decision to leave the presidential race came just 1 day after former President Donald Trump and VP pick J.D. Vance of Ohio held their first campaign rally since the assassination attempt on Trump at a Pennsylvania rally over a week ago. Coming up, we have complete coverage of that rally.
Let me begin this evening with a very special thanks to Americans nationwide, including all of you here today, for your extraordinary outpouring of love and support in the wake of the horrific last Saturday event.
Former President Donald Trump there in his first event following the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee last week. Thousands of people flooded downtown Grand Rapids on a Saturday to see the former president and his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Trump hoping to gain support from voters in an important county in this state. Here in Kent County, what was once a reliable Republican bastion has now become a key battleground in the race for the White House. With the second largest city in this key swing state, it was here that former President Donald Trump stepped on stage to a standing ovation of thousands in his first rally as the official GOP nominee.
We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again.
It was his first campaign rally since the Republican National Convention this week that clinched him the nomination, and where he selected his new running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance.
We had a hell of a 4 years with President Donald J. Trump, didn't we? In 4 years, he undid, I believe, 30 years of damage, of terrible leadership.
It comes 1 week after a shooting at a Trump rally in Pennsylvania that officials are now investigating as an attempted assassination.
I stand before you only by the grace of Almighty God. That's true. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here.
Many have since called for unity in the aftermath and a drop in the political temperature. Even so, Trump having pointed words for his opponents on Saturday.
And as you're seeing, the Democrat Party is not the party of democracy. They're really the enemies of democracy. The parties of corrupt insiders like Whitmer, special interests, and the failed political class.
Democrats responding ahead of the visit with this message.
As a senior senator from Michigan, I will tell you, I am leading the charge to make sure people understand the choice between Trump and Vance, who are only in this for themselves and their billionaire friends, and President Biden and Vice President Harris, who are fighting for working Michiganders, their families, and their freedoms.
Trump's remarks getting raucous approval from the crowd of Trump supporters at the event, some of them waiting days to see the Republican nominee. 13 on Your Side's Nathan Lee was also at that rally and talked with Trump supporters.
I think it shows a lot of bravery and guts.
So we're here. We really want to see Trump and see Vance.
This one's different.
Supporters were fired up for a historic rally from the former president. The first as the officially named Republican candidate, first with new vice presidential pick, and first since an attempted assassination exactly a week prior.
We are very grateful to be a part of history.
Security was a top priority, with Secret Service and local police heavily guarding the building. As the former president spoke, agents surrounded the stage on all sides, scanning the crowd.
They made sure that in advance you knew what you shouldn't bring with you. So it's only the essentials you brought with you, your wallet, cell phone, and nothing else, basically nothing else.
With it being the first rally since Trump was shot, many said they felt a greater need to show up.
Now it's critical. He's our man. They want him dead. And, he's our hero, and we're here to support him.
Not only for the former president, but for new vice president pick J.D. Vance, appearing in his first rally with Donald Trump.
How do you introduce? He's pretty incredible. He's fantastic. He's a good speaker. He knows what he stands for, and he backs Trump 100%.
He has a great sense of humor, and I hadn't listened to that much humor of his before.
Both the former president and J.D. Vance spoke to a packed Van Andel arena.
12,000 of us in that stadium, or arena, I should say, just roaring that he's our man.
With supporters agreeing that the rally was a success for the Trump campaign.
I'm ready to put a sign out in my yard, and I've got neighbors that have other kinds of signs, and I'm intimidated, and I'm not intimidated anymore.
And with just a couple strokes of a pen, Governor Gretchen Whitmer this week signed the newest state budget into law. Just how much went into the largest budget in state history? That's next. Michigan's 2025 budget is now set. Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed the budget in two parts this week. The $82.5 billion budget is the largest in state history and was passed almost entirely along party lines. Some of the investment coming to West Michigan, including millions for the Home for Veterans, a solar array coming to the Butterworth landfill, and more money for affordable housing. The governor signed the general budget at a firehouse in Detroit 1 day after signing the education budget.
We're establishing a new public safety trust fund, which can surge resources to places that need it most. We've made upgrades to emergency communication systems so we can better respond to distress calls. And we're funding community violence intervention programs to tackle the root causes of gun violence and crime. We want to make sure that every Michigander, no matter where you live, is safe as you go to work, drop your kids off at school, run errands.
The budget also includes close to $2.1 billion transferred to local road agencies from the Michigan Transportation Fund. Within 2 hours of that budget signing, Michigan Republican Party Chairman Pete Hoekstra issued a response, saying in part, quote, "This budget uses taxpayer dollars to push the job-killing electric vehicle transition, forces green energy mandates, cuts funding for school safety, mental health, and puts money towards e-bike incentives instead of fixing our crumbling local infrastructure. Michigan needs a budget that supports our students, teachers, roads, and jobs." And Governor Whitmer also signed a bill this week banning the use of the so-called LGBTQ panic defense in state court. That defense, as defined by this bill, claims that the discovery, knowledge, or disclosure of things like a victim's sexual orientation or gender identity was provocation for a defendant to act violently towards the victim, or that it resulted in reduced mental capacity, and that as such, a defendant can attempt to paint the alleged violence as more reasonable to the court. The bill passed along party lines in both chambers last month before heading to the governor's desk and is set to take effect early next year. A new law will make it easier for inmates in poor health to be released from prison. The legislation signed by Whitmer this week replaced a 2019 law that a leading criminal justice reform advocacy group says was only used once. The new law gives the Michigan Parole Board the authority to release someone who is considered medically frail and of minimal risk to the public. Eligible inmates could qualify if they have a permanent physical disability, serious medical condition, or a terminal condition resulting in a life expectancy of less than 18 months. An eligible parolee can be released to a medical facility, hospice, or a home. The parole board can order the parolee to be electronically monitored if determined to be necessary. Inmates serving a term of life imprisonment without parole or convicted of first-degree sexual conduct are not eligible. After some changes were signed into law surrounding when an election recount can be requested in our state, some are wondering whether a candidate can still petition for one if they think fraud may have occurred. Coming up, we verify that question. A change to Michigan election law will affect how election recounts are managed in the state. The update to the law hopes to reduce what some consider frivolous challenges to election results through modifying several aspects and guidelines for requesting and conducting a recount. In part, the changes clarify that a recount is not an audit or investigation of an election. It adds a new threshold for automatic recounts of statewide primary elections, increases the deposits associated with recounts, and requires a review of those deposits every 4 years. It also changes time windows for when recount requests can be filed and requires that the recount requested include enough votes to possibly change the results of the election or ballot question. Bill co-sponsor State Senator Jeremy Moss says he hopes this update can allow for a smooth post-election process.
We cannot have our post-election process be a free-for-all of people who don't like the election results and therefore immediately start to demand investigations into our elections based on no evidence, based on conspiracies, based on lies. So we're trying to take that heat out of the election administrators' hands and put evidence of fraud or wrongdoing where it belongs, and that's in law enforcement's hands.
The updates also make a change in language when dealing with these election recounts, specifically surrounding the word fraud. And one viewer asked us whether this change will stop people from getting a ballot recount where there are allegations of fraud. We verify. Allegations of fraud were a big theme in the 2020 elections, and now some are concerned that this new law would bar candidates from seeking recounts if they think fraud occurred. Viewer Christopher asks us, did Governor Whitmer just sign a bill into law that prohibits recounts on elections based on allegations of fraud? To get the answer, we found Senate Bill 603 that was signed just a few days before Christopher came to us with this question. So let's verify. Our sources are the language of the full bill and the people who authored it. State Senators Stephanie Chang and Jeremy Moss. This new law makes changes to a pre-existing law that handles petitioning for a recount. What some confusion could stem from is where the word fraud was eliminated from the pre-existing law in all but one place. The law had said that in a case where someone believes fraud or mistake kept them from having a reasonable chance of winning, that person could petition for a recount. But in this new version, the words fraud and mistake are often replaced with the word error. Chang said the change broadens when you can file for a recount, and that includes belief of potential fraud.
So in our many work group meetings that we had with the Secretary of State, county clerks, civic organizations, what we realized was let's actually make it broader and use the word error so that it captures everything that we're talking about, especially because we recognize that sometimes a petitioner who wants a recount might not necessarily think that there was fraud or a mistake, but might think that there was some type of broad error that happened. And so we want to be able to allow for those people to file for a recount.
So we can verify, no, this law will not stop election recounts in Michigan if the person believes there may have been fraud. The petitioner will allege a general error, and if the Board of Canvassers find what they feel is evidence during the recount of potential fraud, they will refer it to the local prosecutor or the state attorney general. But you can only petition if the number of ballots you request to be recounted is greater than the difference between the winning and losing candidate. With your Verify, I'm Josh Alburtus. And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.